So let me welcome the panelists for the day as well. So we have an interesting mix of people. Uh, like kind of they bring a lot of expertise to them across different industries, different expertise, from an architecture perspective, from a framework perspective, strategic vision, business adoption, and most importantly, they're all mostly hands-on innovation as well in AI. So I invite Krishna from, Radiant. He's a strategic business advisor. I invite Raghav, technical director for Dell, and Rajneesh, principal architect for Cisco. Thank you. So, we are at a point where AI has moved from being a buzzword to boardrooms. It is becoming the core of how businesses are operating today. They are growing and even competing, right? And today in our conversation, we are going to see how different industries is unlocking real business value through strategic adoption of AI. Okay, and I'm going to pick the panelists' brains on different questions and different lenses of AI. Okay, so to start, Krishna, I'm going to ask you a question, which I guess most of the audience are also kind of curious about. Like, if you're just AI curious, unsure about where you want to start, how do you think they should start their journey on AI?
Okay, so AI curious. Okay, I would assume this is a greenfield organization. Okay, so somebody who is greenfield wants to get into the AI bandwagon. The first thing I would say is don't do anything that is going to disrupt your operations. Don't take a solution or pick something that is your mainstream operations going to disrupt it. For example, just let's think about airline industry, and something like core to that airline industry probably will be the baggage, checking in of the baggage or reservation. So don't go into the core thing, which could probably be a kind of a landmine. So watch out for that, number one. Then how do you go forward is, again, closely align with your strategy, either the business unit or the company strategy. That's number two. The most important thing is about the business case. And here, when we say business case, it's not really about getting an ROI. So the emphasis here, because you're just getting onto the AI bandwagon, so the emphasis here is not about, are you generating revenue? Are you actually making an ROI impact from that? But there are other things to look at. So for example, can you do something through the AI use case in terms of a better customer experience, as an example? Can I do something which is faster? For example, automate. Can I do something that can enable the employees better? And so you have these kind of use cases today with chat GPT, that you can actually engage engage your employees, and empower them to do things more productively. So I think those are some of the areas to go forward if you're starting fresh journey onto AI, and kind of being not taking a very risky position, but then getting to start infusing AI into the organization.
Sure. Thank you. I hear you, Krishna, on that. Start at the edge, move towards core, gain confidence over the way, and then don't disrupt the core operations. That's the key. Uh, Maybe a question, to Rajneesh, right? What are business leaders expecting today in AI? How are they putting their strategies around it?
So again, right? I mean, like Krishna said, there is an alignment that is required amongst the business leaders to make sure that the expectations are not unrealistic. You have to start small. You have to start with some things which are probably achievable and which can be granular. Start with POCs where you can probably achieve what can be done, and then move on to the next big things and so on. During my presentation, I was trying to say what should be the goals for entry level, mid level, and advanced level AI use cases. So you should pick and choose the entry level areas, and it also comes with a lot of infrastructural changes. You have to make sure that you have those infrastructural changes in place. For example, data, right? Data needs to be, you need to have the right kind of data, cleaner data, real time kind of data. And you have to have the infrastructure for that to be able to store the data, to be able to trend analyze it, and so on and so forth. That's one of the set of investments that you need to do. You need to choose the right set of tools for that. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much about it.
Sure. And Raghav, you would like to add to Rajneesh?
Absolutely. I think that was the main topic that I was talking about from the strategic standpoint, how to pick the use cases, how to align to the core strategy, right? Because AI or generative AI, it's sometimes might be overwhelming. We don't want our development teams or even the business teams to pick a wrong use case where the implementation might be good, but it might not reflect really well on the balance sheet, right? Then there is no point, right? Or even the adoption, that's what, right? I mean, if nobody are using, for an example, I'll give you a real-time example, right? So there are multiple code generators that are available. It can be GitHub Copilot, you have Mistral or whatever. Our organization took a bold strategy or a kind of a decision that we should use Codium, right? That's a decision made by our organization. I'm just taking this as a use case. But now, how do you increase an adoption for this, right? How do you make every developer to use Codium, but not GitHub or something else? So what we did from the implementation standpoint, we went ahead, we did the Codium implementation, it all worked well. But we also slightly restricted the access within the organization for Copilot or for other code generating activities. It can be even ChatGPT. We set the time limit and sometimes even the token limits as well. So this eventually increased the adoption. So that's where I'm telling that your strategy should be so clear that it has to be implemented in terms of the feasibility standpoint. That's what Rajneesh was talking about. There should be a right amount of hardware to kind of cater to the demand of the usage. And finally, there should be a good amount of adoption. So every sector of that particular success rate would matter. Then I think that will indirectly help you to kind of see your strategy is getting visualized and it also reflects in your balance sheet.
Do you think that a chief AI officer or a chief AI advisory office or something like that is
Absolutely.
becoming a norm today?
Exactly right. So there are new roles that would be coming up, moving ahead, something like, let's say, a chief AI officer, right? So we all know CTOs, right, or right, CFOs, but I think there is a new role. Indeed, Dell also do have chief AI officer. So some of such C-suite new roles would be coming up. Their main focus would be around, as you rightly mentioned, around strategy, business value, the adoption, the implementation, and how we can actually take these reference implementations to our customers and kind of better explain how did we implement, what were the challenges. I think Krishna was talking about the Verizon implementation, right? It's a true reflection. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. So, what are the main drivers that is forcing companies to invest on AI, Krishna?
Well, rather than forcing, I think there is a everybody wants to get onto the AI bandwagon, right? So I think more than forcing, the right word would be about a FOMO, the fear of missing out the AI wave. But then I think what is forcing, as I said, it's not just about the ROI. There are opportunities in terms of, for example, you look at productivity gains. And Raga was talking about coding. So productivity gains, again, you can look at knowledge worker. You can look at, for example, the job of a coder. There's so much that can be done with co-pilots and code generating software these days, at least the generic software code development. A lot of that can be done by AI, right? So that is one area to look at is about productivity. Then the other thing is about automation. And again, I go back to Rajneesh's interesting presentation about AI ops. And it's not just AI ops, right? That concept of what you can do in terms of automation goes into data centers, it goes into security operation centers, it goes into network operation centers. So that whole concept per se can be applied across entire operations. So again, look at automation there. And again, I keep emphasizing that the risk factor is the most important thing. And just digressing slightly here, when we look at to pre-Gen AI and post-Gen AI, there's a lot of difference. So if you look at what we were doing with AI before Gen AI came in, it was kind of narrowed down to a particular problem statement or a particular activity. So, for example, if you're a car manufacturer, you're coming out with a new model of car, and the problem statement is, who are my within my customer base, who are the target audience that I would like to promote it. So you would do a machine learning kind of a clustering segmentation problem statement, and you would pick up your target customers based on some profiling and stuff like that, right? So there were boundaries, there were some interesting guardrails. Now come to Gen AI. The problem you have here is about the entire thing, like automation, is about the guardrails, the safe ethical use of AI is becoming a bigger concern. So while you do automation, just digress, but that's another important thing. But there's another opportunity besides an ROI kind of a discussion. The other thing I can think about is personalization. I think personalization is catching up in a big way, right? So it could be, it started off with Netflix, but now it's going to a totally different dimension. So whatever is the kind of digital product you're offering, it could be an e-commerce platform, for example. It could be a content platform. It could be an education portal. So a lot of opportunity to really understand the customer profile and then actually offer personalization services. And through that, you can actually get better customer experience. So yeah, so those are the opportunities. But again, everybody wants to be on the bandwagon, and how do you get there is the big question.
Sure, thank you. So Raghav and Rajneesh, on your presentation, you did, like kind of present quite a lot of use cases in traditional AI as well as Gen AI. I would like to, pick your brains on, like what are some of the low-hanging AI initiatives that is gaining traction with the customers or end users?
Yeah, I think like I was presenting and I was trying to tell the early adopters versus the mid adopters versus the late adopters and so on. So some of the low hanging fruits, if I had to say, right, it's more related with collection of the data, visualization of the data, probably be able to come up with some kind of an anomaly detection as such, right? I mean, it could be detecting a security threat, it could be something like identifying if something is going wrong and so on, right? I mean, these are some of the low-hanging fruits, because as of today, most of the customers or enterprises or service providers do not even have the infrastructure to have a single pane of glass for visibly monitoring all of its data or important aspects of logs and so on in one pane of glass. So being able to do that and having a history of that data so that they could detect a trend and anomaly, that itself would be probably the most entry level kind of an use case or a low hanging fruit, in my opinion. Of course, once they're able to do that, they can then look at the data and probably integrate it with their ticketing systems and so on to be able to identify if there is an anomaly, what would be the root cause of that anomaly, and how can I, once they detect the root cause, then they push the changes which is required to resolve that root cause and so on. So those would be the advanced stages, but to start with, in my opinion, detection would be a very low-hanging fruit as such.
Okay. And Raghav, you have been in the consulting
Yeah.
world. So what does customers come and
No.
ask you every day?
No, just to complement what Rajnish was talking about, right? Putting the AI ops dashboard like a unified single pane of glass to understand what's happening from the compute, network, storage, apps, DB, right? Even from the end user experience, everything look good, jazzy. There can be root cause analysis, there can be anomaly detection, everything. Then what next? So that's where, with the current trend that's happening with generative AI right now, which is agentic AI framework, you can actually deploy a cognitive bots or like a cognitive way of writing a code to kind of take that agentic AI framework and build a self-healing cloud. Because when Rajnish says that, okay, this is an anomaly, there is a ticket, rather than a human actually spending a kind of a remediation on that ticket, you can bring the agentic AI framework, which is again a low hanging fruit, try to apply the automation on that particular ticket so that your tickets are getting automatically remediated. Your day to operations team do have a lot of time to put more efforts into the design, strategy, architecture, and his AIOps is going to intelligently reduce the unwanted number of alerts, right? So there is a noise reduction, there is a ticket reduction as well, because if you actually proactively identify and predict, you can even minimize the unwanted impact to the business and applications as well. So these are all the low hanging fruits. I think some of the teams might be doing it without AI. I think just add AI to the existing activities. So I think this will be the low hanging fruit, I would say. Yeah.
Got it. So the next, thing which I wanted to like kind of bring about is like kind of with the rise of all this agentic AIs, right? How are people and processes involved evolving? So maybe on the process question, Krishna, you could answer.
Yeah, I think the process impact is significant. Okay, so because um, the way you need to manage the implementation or even the design first to start with agentic and and then the implementation is very different, right? Just to give a practical example, um, suppose I need to go from house to office, right? And or I need somebody to come, right? For example, so all you need to tell that person is, you know what, this is my address, come over here, right? The person takes a taxi or drives down. It's simple as that. You're not actually breaking down that to the nth level of detail. Whereas if you're actually having agents to do that, you'll actually have to give them very detailed instructions. So with human presence, a lot of things are taken for granted because the human intelligence is working, and wherever something is missing, the common sense or the human intelligence is actually going to fill that gap. Whereas with agents, everything has to be very methodically broken down to the last detail. So, for example, it says, unless you tell it, go and check the weather, the information is not given to an agent. It's not just going to go and check the weather and it's going to take decisions regardless of what it is. So, coming back to your question, you have to literally redo the way your um, workflows are, your business processes are, or your standard operating procedures. You have to, it's going to undergo a huge change because you have to really break it down to a level of granularity that, it's like almost teaching a child, a baby, on how to do things. You just can't say, you don't tell the baby brush your teeth. You have to literally teach the baby, you have to open it, put a toothbrush, so on and so forth. So that is a level of detail you have to instruct an agent to get something done. So there you go with in terms of the complexity of processes or the workflow designs.
Thank you, Krishna. That's pretty insightful. I never thought about changing SOPs that are more, for humans, and then humans understand it, interpret it, in its own ways. But yeah, thank you. And to Raghav and Rajneesh, right? Even on our AI networking board, there is a question: are you scared of AI taking your job? So how are people getting changed?
I'm burdened with generative AI now, so I don't have a fear that I'm going to lose a job. But I think that's where the career skill and even any gaps in the skills needs to be assessed by our business teams. Quickly get them onboarded with the required amount of skills on the generative AI. Rather than having a fear, I think we need to see from the lens how this generative AI can actually help and increase the productivity of an employee and also kind of revenue outcomes for the business. I think that's what my probably the way of looking the overall AI or generative AI as such.
If you ask me, am I scared? Yes, I am scared, right? Because there's nothing that the AI can't do which I can do. That's how I look at it sometimes. But having said that, I think this has been the case with any adoption, right? I mean, be it anything that has come new, it's probably made some of the jobs obsolete, but the whole idea is to evolve, start using AI, try to understand how the AI works. Probably, I mean, it helps us to get rid of those monotonous jobs to a large extent, concentrate on the things that you want to do and like to do. So, yeah. So,
Thank you. And for those who haven't filled, the name for that question, you can put Rajneesh. He's scared of AI taking over jobs. But I hear all the three perspectives. So if I have to summarize it, right? So humans are not going to be replaced by AI, but then humans are going to be replaced by someone uses AI better, right? So something like that. And our jobs are going to get more creative, more useful, more interesting. And all the things which I don't want to do on a day-to-day life is what AI is going to do, right? Thank you. So I'm going to, like kind of deep dive on one thing. What does modern AI architecture look like? Maybe it's a question to Raghav and Rajneesh. I'll start with Rajneesh.
when we say architecture for modern AI,
It could be frameworks, it could be the infrastructure itself.
So
it could
I can tell you what are
yeah.
some of the components which
Yeah.
is really important for any kind of an modern AI architecture in general, right? So there is a need for memory storage, long-term, short-term memory storage. There's a need for some kind of an LLM for query and things like that. Probably a RAG model, which is required for mapping up to the questions and identifying. It could be an SLM, LLM, whichever it is, or it could even be a localized data, which could be used as a reference for any of the questions and so on. And there has to be a framework where agents can talk to each other, because very rarely you'll see one single agent doing all the job. You'll have multi-agent kind of an architecture in general. And yeah, I mean, these are some of the components which is an absolute necessary. Now, how do you want to use this? Now, probably the next set is what kind of data can these agents work on? And for the agents to work on different types of data, you need to have adapters to fetch the data probably real time and curate it, normalize it, and put it in a format which is understandable to the agent and so on. So these are some of the aspects which I can say is important in an architecture for any agentic application, I would say.
Do we need a large investment on GPUs, NPUs, etc., TPUs?
Absolutely. But coming back to your question about the modern AI architecture, I think if you simply go back 2 steps around, there was virtualization, which was trend in the industry. Slowly that became cloud native. We all know cloud native containers, Kubernetes. So that was a trend. I think if you ask me as a Kubernetes developer, I would probably sense that there would be cognitive platforms, just like how you have container platforms. There will be cognitive platforms, which means that at every level, in terms of hardware or in terms of platforms, you will see its integration to AI, right? It can be AI integration or generative AI integration such. So the platforms would be much more intelligent. So we can probably put it like cognitive platforms. And on top of it, there might be a couple of, let's say, agentic AI frameworks that would be much more intelligent. And it might also have some maturity model in terms of APIs to API communication with the MCP coming up in the industry now. That would probably also help all the developers to rewrite their business logic, and even the process leads to redefine their business process as well, what Krishna was talking about. Because if your business process is just, okay, generate API, wash your hands, if that is not compatible to your MCP architecture, then you need to rewrite the business logic. You can, of course, leverage AI for that one, and also redefine your business process that is much more compatible to the MCP landscape. So I think this would be the immediate modernization that would be happening to the architecture. But again, industry is so changing that what might be getting added as a value added services in the next 6 months, we have to wait and watch.
Sure. Thank you. So, Rajneesh, do you want to add on the
So
large investments?
you're asking about the GPU versus CPU kind of thing.
Like,
So
do we require a large investment? From
I
an
think
infra
the best
point?
person to answer that, but however, in my opinion, depends on the use case, right? To a large extent, it depends on the use case. You might need few to many GPUs, depending upon whether you're doing any graphical processing, if you're doing any image processing, and so on. If not, and if you're just looking at leveraging LLMs, and if you're looking at use cases which are probably data heavy, not necessarily picture or graphic heavy, you might do with lesser number of GPUs. But
No, absolutely. I think some of our customers have actually started with only one single H200 box, and they are actually running computer vision use cases on that. If you see, and that application is in the production landscape. One of the smart manufacturing organization, they are using only one single H200 with 8 GPUs, right? You can understand what would be the size of investment. Yet they are seeing the outcomes in the production. So some of the intelligent decisions can certainly happen provided they kind of participate in the advisory services, because they right pick the use case, and also we are going to right size the hardware as well. So they can certainly start something small. Eventually they have to think big, because it's not just one use case on one box going to production, like, right? But I think they have to even have a larger vision to that. But certainly businesses can actually start something small, and even they can even hand over a couple of AI PCs, for an example, to our developers, right? Let them start writing the code on AI PCs and let them take them to the production. It can be hyperscalers or it can be on premises. So there is absolutely a pathway how they can start investing something small and eventually grow bigger. Yeah.
Thank you. There is a recent study from IDC, which kind of said that 88% of AI pilots scale or don't cut to a production scale or widespread deployment in industries. Okay, why do you think AI pilots do fail?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I think I came across that study. Roughly about 90% of pilots don't scale. So yeah, could be. So there are a couple of reasons. The first one is, the kind of initiative or the kind of the pilot, right? Most of them, from what I reckon, they're kind of a fragmented approach. So when we look at any initiative, it really needs a tops-down approach. You really need the executive buy-in. So if you're doing something which is fragmented, which is just at a functional level, so that may not get the necessary support. So that could be one reason. The other one is really, if you look at, I think Raghav brought about this point about chief AI officer, or today most of the organizations have a chief data officer, right? Having said that, still the issue we do see is that there's still, whatever is coming, the core, the competencies built are more around the AI capability or data plus AI capability in an organization. So that is not good enough to actually take, if you are taking any use case, any functional use case, that's just not good enough to have a pocket of a center of excellence or a competency center around AI that has to cut across the organization to really make that scale, right? So that's the other problem that we really see talking to customers and in engagements. It comes out quite clearly that, what, I have this, but somehow the adoption is not there. I'm not getting the buy-in within my own organization and so on. The other thing could be really about, again, similar to the second one, is about how siloed we are. So if you really want to take AI, you have to, the earlier question about processes. So that has to actually match, or, the business process re-engineering needs to be done. So actually you need to have the AI teams having touch points across the business functions, across the other processes and so on, right? So there's still that gap here. But I think from what I was, in my experience in talking to people, what I reckon is one of the top reason I would say is there's no clear definition of the pilot. Right? What do you expect from the pilot? Right? A lot of times a pilot is done without a clear anticipation or expectation of a goal. So are you doing a pilot just because you want to prove something technically? Is it a technology proof that your success that you're looking for? So if you actually define the pilot properly with the right KPIs, and then what happens if you hit the KPIs, what is next? Are you going to go mainstream? I think that would actually address the chances of initiatives which are at a pilot phase actually scaling in an organization.
Thank you. That brings us to an interesting, like kind of a topic. Do we need to redefine success to measure AI implementations, or what kind of metrics do you guys
Probably
like kind of work?
predefined, right? I mean, when we enter
Okay. Not redefine, predefined.
predefined success. And also, right, I mean, just to add to what you were saying, um, alignment is another thing which I see is important. There could be different expectations amongst the business leader versus the technical architects versus the vendors who are doing the POCs as such, right? There's an importance of alignment, and also alignment not just in technical sense but also in security sense, right? I mean, it's important that uh, the person who's helping with the POC does not feel threatened by the AI use cases and things like that. So these are some of the things which boils down to siloed vision and probably a business alignment and things like that. So,
Okay, thank you. So, Raghav, I'm
No,
going
absolutely. I kind of want to counter argue what Krishna was talking about. Certainly, I'm not angry on you, but why are we even expecting that every POC should be in production, right? Not really a good thing to kind of expect, right? Because I might do a quick POC just to see how that technology do work, right? Just for my understanding, or probably for my team's understanding, right? Is that POC is really a right fit for my ecosystem or not, to my business or not, to my division or not? I might just do a quick validation. It's just like try, do, test it out, or something like fail fast. If it is really good enough, I mean, if that POC is a right fit meant to the ecosystem of business, probably as mentioned by Rajnish, they can probably write an article or submit the kind of justification. Hey, this is what we see. These are right fit. Can we take it into production, right? So there might be other conversation as well. But I see some developers or a bunch of team members want to try test out new technology, right? They might do a quick prototype, might be on premises, might be in their laptop, might be on the cloud, right? So need not be into the kind of a production landscape. But yes, the larger ones that is being driven by the organization or by the AI teams, yes, there should be a critical consideration. Why exactly are we even investing the time into the POCs, and is there a real need to get them into production? But some team members or developers who are just trying and testing a new technology as a POC, I think the intention might not be even to put them into production, right? So there are two areas to it. Yeah.
Just to clarify on that, um, somebody's raising their hand there also. 1 second, just to clarify, I think my comments were more looking at small medium enterprises. I'm not talking about large global enterprises. For them, an investment in a pilot or a POC may not be that significant. So my comments were more with the perspective that if you're a small medium enterprise trying to get into the AI bandwagon, that POC or that pilot is going to be a trade-off on some of the investment somewhere else.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think there was a question.
can somebody?
Thank you. Yeah, very nice, informative discussions. I just want to understand, like, for example, as you guys kind of going in their different directions, I want to take a call. Like, your question is like IDC is saying 80% are failure, right? And proof of concept are not taken as a consideration by IDC things. Like, they are talking about actual projects, which is we are going to fail. Like, I mean, because of some of the right prototype we have not choose or whatever. So the question is like, are we going in a directions or we mislead that directions? So means like my questions to you guys, like a panelist, to understand, are we really using AI in the right directions? That's why we are failing, or we are something misleading in a way. That's why it is not actually what we're expected. So I want to your views like on this, that part.
Yeah, I think I'm not personally read the IDC report, so I don't know whether it's 88%, whether it's POCs and POCs should not be taken into consideration. But there are a couple of other reports out there the general consensus, we can Google later on also, but the general consensus seems to be that a large number of initiatives, pilots actually don't scale. Now, whether the right phrase here is whether it's called a learning or a failure is a very different aspect. But the point here is that they do not scale. Now, I think your comment is right. So, yeah, again, we need to put on different hats here. So, which hat are you putting on? Are you putting on a hat of a major technology company? Are you putting on the hat of a small, medium enterprise or a relatively larger enterprise company? So, I think that perspective also is required because something not taking off, not scaling, that investment is could be very different depending on which organization and where they sit in, right? So I think, yeah, the question here is goes back to the earlier comment. Are you just trying to get onto the AI bandwagon, and rather than that, align with your strategy, look into your the business case, and business case, as I said, does not really need to be an ROI return. What are you expecting from that pilot? If you're putting a couple of KPIs, and if you hit those KPIs, what are you going to do next with that pilot?
And just to provide a bit more context on the IDC report, right? So it is based on observed POCs. A lot of POCs are not observed in nature, but this is based on observed POCs. And the reason that the report actually indicates, like kind of resonates well with the conversations that we have. It kind of indicates the lack of readiness for the organization in terms of their data, their IT infrastructure, or their processes. Which we were discussing it in multiple angles, right? And Raghav, that's a fair point, right? Not all POCs
Exactly,
need
right?
to-
Because when you build let's take a simple chatbot, right? A rack chatbot, you might try and test it out with 10 GB of data. Everything works, it's responding, all good. But when you want to put that into at a enterprise adoption scale, you need to actually go choose the entire data readiness, how good the data quality. You need to kind of pull all the data sources, right? You need to build a brand new data lakehouse, for an example, right? I don't know how far so many data stakeholders would be able to easily give you an access to such data. So there are multiple factors why some of the POCs might not get into the production as well. But yet the POC, if you just see the POC, it will be really good. It might be a success story.
Yep, sure. I'm going to put a straightforward question here, and I want only one answer for this. Okay, what is more important, data, tech, or the mindset?
Sure.
Okay, mindset from Prajnesh. Only one answer, Krishna.
It's the question is an analogy to this question is what is important? Is the gas stove important? Is the gas important, or is the lighter important to get it going? So, data, tech, and mindset, right? I would say the mindset, the initiative has to be there first.
Absolutely. Data, the gold.
Yep, I take it. That was a tough question. I was just putting you guys on the spot. I feel like you have to invest on everything, right? So yeah, I got it. So, okay, Krishna, question to you from a CIO or CTO perspective. Okay, if they have to evaluate whether they work with a large service provider like kind of Microsoft or Google, okay, but like a smaller organization, but specialist in AI, okay, like kind of Radiant, who should they choose?
I think that's an easy answer, isn't it? You should go with Radiant. Okay. On a more serious note, I think, see, it depends. There's a lot of underlying factors that need to be considered, right? First is what exactly is the technology, or the maturity of what you're doing. What is the use case? What is the scale you're looking at? Are you doing something which is very local, one particular small center? Is it more regional? Is it global? That kind of a thing. So I don't think there's a straight cut answer to this question, and depends on number of variables here. But then, broadly speaking, if you were to go with some of the tech giants, there are pros and cons which are pretty clear, right? So yeah, the pros would be, yes, it's an established player, the technology or the frameworks, those kind of things are there. If you're looking at something global, then you get the necessary support to get a global deployment, to scale it, and so on and so forth. Again, the con side, you have issues here because, are you really getting the price performance for that? There's a high chance that you could be locking in that vendor for a period of time and so on. So there are pros and cons here. Now, coming to the question about why not a company like Radiant? So again, the advantages there would be in terms of definitely price performance would be there. And if you're coming really to a specific use cases, specific capabilities, and if you today look around, most of the AI is actually coming from startups. There's a whole lot of startups there who are actually fueling the innovation and the development, right? So if you do the proper evaluation and if your use case fits it, you're probably better off going and not getting into a vendor lock-in situation.
Thank you, Krishna. Right. So I guess I can talk on behalf of everyone here, on this question. We definitely have seen an email which we know that it was written by ChatGPT, right? So, question to the panelists is like, how do you keep those AI interactions more human? Is it even important, that businesses has to think that this interactions need to be like kind of human-like? So, to Raghav, maybe we'll start with Raghav.
No, it should be, it needs to have that a bit of human language to it. Because when I say something is not working, for an example, if you write an email like a poem, then yeah, I mean, as you rightly mentioned, right, it's easy, good to kind of understand that email, but there might not be a takeaway from the human angle perspective. So yes, there should be certain, I would say, kind of a human intelligence while we even craft an email, because that will give you a personal touch, right? So when I know what about you and how do you respond to my emails, I mean, ChatGPT doesn't know, right? So the way you respond, I mean, with the kind of communication flow that we both have, I can only kind of craft my own email to you so that I understand what would be the response as such. If I write a poem to my manager, I know what would be my next email from him, right? So, right? So a similar thing. So there should be a human touch for a couple of such use cases. Yeah.
Sure. Rajneesh.
I resonate with what Raghav was saying as well. After a point in time, right, you get bored with the kind of answers which ChatGPT or Gemini gives, right? It's going to be always point-based. It's going to be a lot more logical. You kind of recognize the pattern. And that's probably not you all the time, right? I mean, you might be giving a different twist to your responses, to your queries and so on. So until and unless it's extremely important to use it for day-to-day activities, you can use it. Otherwise, I would say it's like letter writing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's what we call fait accompli, isn't it? Right? When we have Gen AI, it's fait accompli. You can't stop it. You'll get emails which are generated with ChatGPT, right? And it's a concern because it's actually especially if you look into what's going on in universities and some of the concerns of teachers, it's really killing creativity. It's like going about 30 years back in time, where you go into a store and people, the shopkeeper would do the math mentally, and today there's a calculator. Even if you buy 3 items, the guy is sitting and punching. So it's fait accompli, right? Calculators came in, and the mind's ability to do the simple math is gone out. So with ChatGPT, that's a fait accompli, I would say. But having said that, there are some workarounds. One, I can prompt ChatGPT or any of the Perplexity or anything that I'm using. I can prompt it. I can say, henceforth, when you reply to me, be formal in your communication. Or I can tell it, you reply to me as a comedian. You can prompt it. The second way of doing it is, again, there's so many of this. I'm just throwing out some examples here. The other way of doing it is, if you want in your organization people not to use ChatGPT or any LLM for generating emails, you can actually prompt it and say, henceforth, no emails can be put in as a thing. You can stop it totally, right? So there are ways to do that.
Also, there is a security threat, right? I mean, when you are giving it so much of data, it's also something which you need to consider. So.
Sure. Like if I have to say, right, the Microsoft Copilot in Outlook now kind of allows you to coach the Copilot in terms of drafting. So you can say how warm you want, how casual you want, and things like that. So it kind of picks up learning, from the data that you mentioned. But if you ask me personally, I would want ChatGPT to be ChatGPT only because I just got tricked recently. I tried to generate a video, by passing like kind of an audio file and then the lyrics of a song and then what credits and the all the details that I want as overlaid, and I kind of gave it and it kind of took me through an entire journey that it is going to do this, it is going to do that, and then it said I'm doing it, and then it kind of even generated links and everything, and it was taking like kind of 2 hours 3 hours, and it said like I'm going to put it in an cloud drive that you can download, etc. And then nothing happened. I waited for 2 3 hours, nothing happened. When I went and asked, are you still done? It said, okay, maybe I can give you a sample piece of it. Okay, now for you to test it and then come back and tell me whether there are any edits, and then I will incorporate those edits on my final video. Still nothing. Another 2 hours 3 hours, I'm traveling from one city to another city, I have reached other city, nothing. And then I asked, are you hallucinating? It said, you caught me. I can show you the conversation, okay? It's there on my you caught me. And then it said, I can't do this, but maybe I will do something else. And I have exhausted my upload limits also. I had to take premium, and Apple did not, refund my purchase on ChatGPT as well. So yeah, it does happen. So I feel like sometimes AI is being AI is good. Sometimes AI is being AI is not the right thing. Yeah, thank you. So after this question, I'm going to maybe, or we can open up the questions for audience.
Maybe this question to Rajneesh. So we just talked about the AOps, right? Like when we talk about AOps, we talk about the auto ticketing, self-healing networks, right? So how practical it is today, the self-healing? Like up to what extent at least your organization is using?
So it's more about what the industry is using in general, right? So there is this forum called as TM Forum, which kind of evaluates what is the current journey for each and every service provider, enterprise networks, and so on. It says, it puts you on a scale of 1 to 5, says what's your maturity level, says 1 is you're completely manual, 5 is like super automated, autonomous network wherein you have a completely self-healing, self-explaining closed loop as such, right? Most of the service providers or enterprises are somewhere in the level 2, where they are starting their journey towards the autonomous network, wherein they are trying to have some aspects of their closed loop being addressed, but not necessarily. And I wouldn't say there is anything wherein self-healing is happening on its own. Self-healing itself comes somewhere in the level 4, level 5 aspects of it. So you can say that most of the operators who are probably, if you're looking at their journey, they have an idea of the data. Their awareness is there, wherein they are able to generate all the data, push it to the central piece, observe it, probably even predict it, and also detect the anomalies. Now, some of them probably in the Japan areas and so on, they have gone a step ahead and probably integrated it with their ticketing loops to identify what would be the reasons and what would be the causes and so on. But that's probably the max where anybody has reached at this point in time. Now to be able to identify the remediation, closing the loop, and observing and so on, that's something which is autonomous level 4 and 5. That could happen very soon, but I don't know of anybody who has already been doing that at this point in time. Yeah.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah. So my question is with respect to, I'm here. With respect to the governance frameworks that you expect across the world, right? I mean, regionally speaking, Europe has tighter restrictions around some of the AI, right? And then US is, of course, having less restrictions. which is in your, not just data governance, even the AI governance. I think the rules that Europe is framing are way stricter than, let's say, in US, right? In terms of the use of AI, the ethical AI concept. So my question is, what do you think is a better mechanism forward? The US model, where you allow all of these, models and AIs to flourish, and then probably try to put some kind of a governance structure on top of it, or what we are doing in probably Europe, where there is more governance, and then probably that will allow a more ethical way forward. And I guess, my question is more in terms of understanding how best AI can be utilized, which model can help it flourish a little bit more, because I am a big believer of what AI can achieve. So, yeah.
Understood your question correctly. What kind of a governance model is what I believe in, which is one is a free governance, wherein towards how the North America sees, versus some kind of ethical AI concept which Europe believes in. Is that what's your question? To be honest, everybody can have a different opinion, but I believe the Europe is going in the right way, probably because when we talk about generative AI, today probably we are in a situation where we can control a lot of it, a lot of what the AI does, and probably what the AI should do. We can probably restrict it as much as possible today. But once we probably reach level 4, level 5, wherein generative AI starts generating stuff and starts governing, self-governing, it's going to be very, very difficult to be able to sit on top of it and probably be starting to think of what kind of ethics to introduce. So it's important, probably, in my opinion. It's just purely my opinion, but I feel it's probably the Europe ways is what I prefer in my
Absolutely good points. Just to add, right, I think there should be certainly guardrails to the AI ecosystem. Else, it's like a wild horse running in the forest, right? So certainly, I would also mention by Rajneesh, right? So I would look really good from the European standards perspective, taking the GDPR data retention policies, compliance, everything into consideration. They might have probably looking into ethical AI or something like responsible AI, right? So certainly, I mean, we need to kind of appreciate the guardrails that is actually being planned by Europe compared to US. Think about the damage what AI can do, right? You are seeing all the kind of deepfake videos that are coming up. So I think there should be a way to kind of put a boundary, a safe boundary. Think about some of the teenagers who might get impacted with these videos as such, right? So certainly, I think yes, there should be a couple of freedom in terms of how we can use, but there should be a thin boundary to the kind of what is the extent of freedom that you need, right? So yeah, I would say kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And it goes back to the general PDP discussions, wherein US as a market is a little more liberal, whereas Europe is pretty stringent on the PDP measures and the protection mechanisms. In case of AI, maybe in terms of data, maybe Europe has gone a little too much overboard in terms of GDPR and PDP. But when it comes to AI, I think absolutely right. We all agree here. I think there's high time that we start reining in AI before it gets really out of control here. Having said that, I don't think we can fall back onto a regulatory kind of a framework or a governance structure. So the way to look at it is you probably need something at a country level, and that's where you look at Singapore. There's a lot of initiatives by the government in terms of responsible AI, safe AI. There's a lot of measurements that are taking place at a government level. That's number one thing. Second thing is distilling down to an organization level. That's where whether whatever is the title, CDO or CAI or whatever you give it, the responsible use of AI has to come in there, and there has to be more stringent rules and practices to put in place to make sure that it's not getting out of control quickly.
And
It's a great question.
Thanks for the question. That's a question that I missed out in the interest of time. And just to add my perspectives to it, right? A lot of this data that is getting generated is in a gray area. Okay. For example, you take the CCTV cameras. Someone has access to all the images, our facial images or anything, right? So now you need strong guardrails enforced. If otherwise, this could be utilized for n number of purposes. We don't know. The sky is a limit over there. So that is one thing. So we have a blanket consent. I see. On most of the data generation. So that is one thing. And the second thing is it also boils down to the individual also in terms of attribution of any AI generated content, right? So you generate a image, you generate a code, etc. And we personally in my practice we have a metadata tag on AI generated. So so that anything happens in future, there is a clause. OpenAI comes and says you can't use anymore any of our codes, or if any of your software is having our code generated code, then you have to pay me some X percentage of revenue, whatever it is, right? Then I should be able to figure out which piece of code that I generated, right? So all this needs to be taken into consideration as well. Thank you. One last question from the audience.
Maybe a corollary, but also slightly tangential. How are you seeing AI at the junction of dual use technology? Because dual use technology, which can be used for both military and civilian purposes, used or misused as the case may be. We've seen countries, at least the large ones, making very, very serious steps to do things with what I like to call battle bots, but countries may call it differently. It's in many cases still in pilot phase, but I'm pretty sure somewhere out there are examples of actual live use of AI to either attack or defend or both. We are talking about 5th and 6th and 7th generation planes which integrate with such technology. To the point made on guardrails, to the points made on PDPA and all these data protection that the civilian world has and doesn't really exist in the military side of things, where there are dual use cases for these. Are you seeing again a form of AI come in and sort of set boundaries, or is it still where you're seeing just the human comes in and says, no, this is not flying, but the human doesn't know the AI has already flown it?
I think your question has crossed the realms of what this panel can actually address, because it's a very, very sensitive question, number one. And to answer your question, I think if we turn the pages back last 12, 15 days, it's actually happened.
Okay, so any more questions from audience? Okay, so what stood out today over this conversation, right? It's like kind of monetizing AI is not about deploying some random models in fancy infrastructure. It's about aligning, the tech, the data, the mindset, with a definitive business objective in picture, right? And AI is no longer a sort of a moonshot. With the right approach, I guess we would be able to have or unlock tangible return on investments here. And thanks for the panelists for your time. Thanks for the audience, and wish you the best on your next AI initiative. I hope they just don't simply scale, but then they soar. Thank you.
Thank you.